session number 6, I believe, of the Excellence 005 series. And today we're going to talk about excellence through teamwork. And we're absolutely delighted to have Andy Weir from HBOS, who will tell us the benefits of teamwork in a financial services context. And I will introduce Andy in more detail in a bit. I think somebody said once, teams are the heroes of the 80s. And then I heard it being said, teams are the heroes of the 1990s. And you will see from my presentation, I also said that teams are the heroes for the 21st century. So it seems that we might be repeating the message that teamwork is very important, and understanding how to foster a culture of teamwork is absolutely essential, because you build the synergy of teamwork through building the knowledge base. You know, that is really the correlation between the effect or the impact and the investment, you know, which is human resource development and the development of systems, structures, and everything else. So let's explore this in a little bit more detail. Just to warm you up a little bit, please understand that teamwork does not mean together everyone annoys me. He is a disgruntled person who's standing up there and saying, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I haven't even agreed to give this presentation. So teamwork is not about volunteering individuals to do what they don't want to do. And he is another one here saying that, you know, don't tell them we failed, tell them we have decided to temporarily postpone our success. That's when everything goes wrong, you see. So if you don't want to blame the person, you know, just say you've changed the plan. And here's another one saying, I'm not procrastinating, I'm proactively delaying the implementation of energy-intensive phase of the project until the enthusiasm factor is at its maximum effectiveness. And the last one is, I can't turn down the thermostat, we don't have a committee or budget for that. And it seems that some of the empowerment that exists in some businesses is really when they want to make big decisions, like salary cuts and, you know. So that's not what teamwork is about. And I did say right at the beginning that teamwork is making people count. Teamwork is about active participation, not voting. Teamwork is about synergy. And teamwork is about that power of harnessing the intellectual capital and harnessing the energies and the ideas of people. So as a concept, I don't think teamwork can be hailed as a new innovation. It goes back probably in a documented manner after scientific management, and then in the 30s when the human relations movement started to grow and the individuals and the human factors started to be appreciated, and more or less it started to happen in the 50s in Japan. The documented case studies came in the early 60s, quality control circles, quality control, company-wide quality control in Japan, and then obviously the Kaizen, the 5 S's, and everything associated with Japanese management techniques until at least the 70s. And then it was introduced in the West, particularly in the automobile sector, through lean manufacturing, agile manufacturing, and then obviously now teamwork is an accepted concept. So it is well documented. It was a Japanese specialty. And we, as we will see through the presentation, quality control circles was a type of teamwork which is bottom-up, but the significant teamwork approaches that have been adopted since are top-down, structured, driven by management, and strategically oriented towards achieving bigger goals. Why do we use teamwork? Very simple. We use it because it's the best way of getting the best out of people. So traditional corporate hierarchical structures really rely on individuals. So the contributions are isolated and the synergy levels are not there. So by putting 1 + 1 = 4, managers realize that this is the best way of doing things. And as I said, the synergy is built in 2 ways. One is getting people voluntarily to sit and work together. And the QCCs, the quality control circles, are voluntary groupings. There are some rules of doing that, obviously, but they are not set up by management. Management have nothing to do with choosing individuals or telling teams how many times they should meet or what projects they should work on. They just facilitate the climate and they just give teams time to meet and discuss their own issues. And management have the responsibility for listening to the recommendation of the people who meet to solve their work problems. The top-down is really about change. Anything that is pushed top-down is change, whether it's incremental, whether it's radical. But I put here BPR-type teams. They are the teams who re-engineer, who do restructuring, who do big transformational projects. Just in case any of you is not sure about what is a team, the teams are not working groups. Working groups come there with specific tasks, but they don't have to feed from each other. Teams, on the other hand, are interdependent. The interdependency, which we'll come back to in a minute, is absolutely critical. Interdependency from the point of view of passing on information, sharing resources, using skills and expertise level, but it's about putting everything in one pot to achieve common goals. Please understand these words. They are very, very critical. A working group, like a panel for appointing senior professors, for example, is a working group. They are not a team. They don't have a shared goal as such, and that is the difference. 5 maybe characteristics to look at for teamwork. First of all, I said shared goals, number 1 criterion. And they work towards achieving that goal. You hear about goal congruence, team alignment. The alignment means that we all talk the same language, we all visualize the same path, we all accept the milestones, we all embrace common responsibilities, we all work hard towards supporting each other, we all don't put any boundaries towards sharing our knowledge and expertise, and we all are passionate about working together and wanting to achieve. So there's a little bit of psychology, a little bit of expertise, a little bit of professionalism, a little bit of experience, and so on and so forth. All of this is put together. The outcomes are really one outcome. You don't divide the outcomes throughout the individuals. It's one team doing one project for one or several goals. And then the collective reward is obviously one collective award for the teams. The second thing is that the interdependency, which I talked about, and I will describe it in a minute, that interdependency is really synergy based. Otherwise it is really working individuals. You know, they sit together, but they think like individuals, they function like individuals. And they are in silos, even from the point of view of what do they want to achieve and what do they want to get out of it. So that is the problem, and I think that is something to bear in mind. That is a characteristic that we need to appreciate. Let me just now say what is meant by interdependency. Interdependency is that the people who are working on a project rely on each other 100%. You cannot really do the project if one member is missing. You cannot make a decision if one piece of information is missing. Pieces of the jigsaw have got to be put together. That's what it means. And also, it's this reliance on the fact that we are speaking a common language. We have shared goals. And that is really the hallmark of teamwork, interdependency. You know. Number 3 is that teams are bounded. And I will explain what that means in a minute. And they remain relatively stable over time. Why is this important? Because it takes time to build team synergy. You have to work on the psychology. So we have to get people to bear each other, to really appreciate each other for what can be accomplished and what can be done. Individuals are different. They think differently, they act differently, and they also behave differently. The other thing is that the expectations of individuals are different. Some people come to work in the context of a team because they believe that teamwork is the only way of doing things. Some people come to work in a team because they say, I want to prove that I can do things. And you know, I want my colleagues basically to appreciate me for my knowledge. Some people come to work in a group because it's a career advancement which is there in front of them. And some people come to work in a team because they're curious about others. So that understanding that psychology, breaking the individualism and building the common features of teamwork takes time. It's an investment for organization. And that's why this is one of the characteristics that we need to understand. This boundedness means that every team has an identity. So we identify with each other. The membership is really the way we have signed the charter. We have developed certain protocols, and we understand how we're going to function together. It's like a football manager. You have seen it time and time again, those of you who watch football. When a new manager comes in, they experiment. They try to build a cohesion within the individual team, and they try basically to identify who will serve that common purpose. And whenever somebody does not fit in, they just discard them and bring somebody else. So building that boundedness is absolutely critical. Then you can talk about the interdependency. Then you are functioning as a team. But forming the team, developing the team is critical. And then there is this business of stability. Stability is the tenure of membership. You cannot break that momentum because it takes time. Building the understanding, the telepathy, the empathy between individuals. Getting the work basically to progress. And then if somebody leaves, the whole team suffers, not the individual who's going to take over from his or her colleague. You know, keeping that together. And I think a lot of managers make a mistake here. They move individuals too quickly without realizing the implications on teamwork. Fourthly, the authority to manage their own work and internal processes. That is a key characteristic. Empowerment builds synergy. Without empowerment, you have 5 individuals or 8 individuals who sit together and they talk together, but they don't make decisions. You know, you must move the momentum forward. You must really provide people with authority and empowerment. And the last characteristic of teamwork is really that they operate in a social context. They have to understand that they are not really dreamers. You know, whilst they are compelled to work in a coherent and systematic fashion and behave professionally, they also have to have a feel for the rest of the environment. The impact they create directly on others and the impact that others create on them. You know, they need to understand the limitations on the organizations. They need to understand that others might need their help as individuals, because sooner or later, when you finish your job as a team player, you'll have to go back to your function. They need to get directive from senior managers about changes, and changes happen. So the goalpost might change a little bit. The resource level might be an issue. The opportunity that presents itself on a team is also something that they need to appreciate. The technology that they're working with might also change. Loads of things. It's real. That is, and particularly if you work on projects that have a duration of 18 months or 3 years, unless you integrate within the boundaries of teamwork something about flexibility, something about adaptability, and something about exploitation of opportunity, then you're not going to get the project finished in the right way. So those are 5 rules basically that need to be adhered to. And for those of you who arrived late, here's a slide that has just summarized what I have said. First of all, the essence of teamwork is having a shared goal. Okay, teamwork is not equated to working groups. Working groups are there to do their individual bits. You know, I gave the example of an appointment panel. Somebody from personnel will ask specific questions about personnel and conditions of employment and contractual things. Somebody who basically looks at workload and teaching and everything else will ask about that. Somebody who is interested in research will ask about research. Somebody who wants to talk about administration responsibility will talk about that. That's a working group. Working group is not a teamwork. Teamwork is a shared goal. The second condition is interdependency, which means that that goal cannot be achieved in a skewed manner where 1 or 2 individuals overtake the rest of the group and you know, they bully, overpower, and hijack the project for their own ego trip or you know, for their own reasons, whatever. That doesn't happen. The third one, as we said, is this boundedness, where teams have got to be linked psychologically through mutual understanding and then kept stable so that they can realize their project. The fourth one is that teams have got to have the authority and the empowerment to rule their own work environment and their processes. And the last thing is really about the sensitivity that teams should have about the environment, where they work within the organization, but also the external environment. Let's now talk about the different types of control, because this is where it becomes interesting about the different types of teamwork. You hear about self-managed work teams, self-directed work teams, process improvement teams, corrective action teams, quality improvement teams. So it's cats, dogs, and you know, and everything else. So loads of jargon, loads of different types of teams. So what are these differences? Let's first of all talk about what we call these manager-led teams. In this context, basically, it's the follow-me principle, but hopefully it's the follow-me with enlightenment, so that the manager is really a member of the team, can adapt with the team, but also they are leading the team in the right way, you know, in a positive way. So in this context, what the role of the team leader or the manager is to define the goals for the teams, determine the tactics and the methods that they're going to use, and how they're going to interrelate and become interdependent. What is the role of the flock who are behind? It's really to make things happen. The execution of the assigned goal. That's one format. And we will see through a chart in a few minutes where it works best. The second type is really what we call self-managing or self-regulating, self-directed work teams. In this context, the leader is from within. They just give the direction. They just determine what the goal is for the team. But then they leave everything else to the team. Total liberty to discuss strategies, to manage resources, to engage whom they want to engage in the project, and to identify the methods that will give the project the best chance of success. That is very, very common. I would say probably, and Andy probably will echo this, that's probably 70% of the teamwork that takes place. Self-directing or self-designing teams is really about where the teams start with a blank sheet of paper by deciding you know, what projects they will work on, what change programs they would like to lead on behalf of their organizations, what tactics they're going to use, what resource levels they're going to make submissions for and allocate, externally what technologies they might evaluate, appraise, and bring back in the organization, and so on. These are big projects that are being managed, and the teams that work in this fashion have significant impact on their organizations. In this context, what is the role of management? It's only the organizational context, you know, the policies mainly, and not beyond that. So it's handing over total responsibility. However, although the high risk is evident in this context, but also to calibrate it, there is high potential for innovation and high potential for really getting that passion, because the empowerment is total. So the response to the empowerment is very much lots of innovation and lots of opportunity for bringing about sensible and positive change programs. So learning and change. And then, you know, one type which you don't see a lot of is self-governing teams. These are teams that, if you like, where even the board members and the directors are engaged. They get their hands dirty. They're engaged in the execution of the tasks. And they manage their own performance processes. And they design basically the organizational context. They are the extreme in terms of control and responsibility. So everybody is working together. There is no two layers, two levels. Even the policies are put in that same pot. So in a sense, teamwork is about what is put in the pot. You see, is it a soup or is it a, you know, something that big? And then as you grow in terms of strategic relevance and risk, you know, you reach the pinnacle, which is this self-governing teams. Here's the chart that I was talking about. It's really about mapping the teamwork format and the authority level, how far it does go. But let's start from the bottom level. And as I said, probably 70% of the teamwork is in the first two bottom layers. Executing the task is what you expect out of a team. The brief comes from top management. The membership is also appointed by top management in most cases. The resources are allocated from top management. The period of execution is also determined by top management. And the team is left to execute the task. So very much operational, and that's why you see the gray boxes there. The second level is, again, where self-managed work teams work, as we explained. They take responsibility for managing their processes, choosing the methodologies, and moving the project forward. And the self-designed and governing, self-designing teams, they pierce through to another level, which is designing of the group as a performing unit. This is where managers become part of the team. They only influence at the policy level. The black boxes really tell you that self-governing work teams, they create blueprints, organizational blueprints, organizational context, the vision, the purpose, the technology, and everything else. You know, so you bring a group of champions working together. The board members come down to an operational level because they are creating a new organization. So you see this route here, very, very unusually, when you are setting up a brand new organization, right from scratch. So it's a project team putting it together. I mean, I remember in the mid-90s, I worked with my team. We worked on the setting up of the Royal Armouries in Leeds. And that's exactly how it happened. And I remember we had the chairman of the board, the CEO, the finance director, all the board members. We even had people from outside. We have the catering people at the time. And because it was building a blueprint, a museum that doesn't exist in the UK, you know. And it was like saying, you know, I also worked on a project called the Sigma project in the early 90s, which was to re-engineer Leicester Royal Infirmary and create a new hospital. And the motto then was saying, suppose we didn't have a hospital in our city and we have to build a new one. How do we do it? You know? So everybody is in the same pot. The creativity comes from everybody. The decision-making comes from everybody. And you create all the soft and hard pillars that brings about organizational excellence. So the best way to view this chart is bottom-up, and you see what the different types of team can pierce through, the degree of autonomy and influence that they do. But those two, basically, you can see where the 70% is coming from. You can see the shadedness of those boxes. Right, just now to start to wrap up before I hand over to Andy. Future challenges. There are lots of challenges for teamwork as we move forward with a knowledge-based society, knowledge-based economy, knowledge-based organization, and so on and so forth. And really, some of it is philosophical, some of it really is about relevance, and some of it is about putting the context of teamwork into question. As we work with knowledge, does knowledge means it's available to everybody? It means that I can build interdependency without having to work on the psychology of teamwork. Maybe. Just think about it. Virtuality is reality, we say. So therefore, I can have 100 people working together coherently, and they share the same goal, but they've never met. They don't have to like or dislike each other. They don't have to look at each other's faces. They don't have to bear with each other's habits, because what you want is the contribution. So that tacit knowledge is put on the table, and then collectively you can realize the goals. But think about it for a minute. But let's first of all explore only three which I've picked up. The first one is this issue of specialization. Contrary to what people were saying, I mean, I remember when we were launching quality management as a movement, and then we moved to business process management, a lot of people said to us, you are really stifling the importance of specialization, because when you put everybody in a team context, they don't have time to specialize and seek their knowledge and advance their expertise in particular fields. That's a lot of nonsense, because I think what the information technology revolution has done, it has enabled individuals to continue to pierce through and build their expertise levels, and by the same time contribute in a team. So you absorb the knowledge that you want as an individual, but you work in a team context. When you go and have a buffet, you go in a buffet restaurant, we don't all eat the same thing, but we can all meet around the table, have our dishes in front of us, and we can still talk. So that's the kind of thing that is happening. So on the contrary, specialization is really growing very significantly. If you look at the medical field, for example, I mean, because technology has revolutionized healthcare, you have, you go to, for example, clinical support services, and you have radiography, for example. You have somebody specializes in mechanical devices and their maintenance. Somebody specializes in, the films that are used for taking X-rays. Somebody is specialized in taking scans, and somebody is specialized. So specialization has increased in the culture, if you like, which is getting people more and more to work in a common, interdependent fashion. So the prediction is that that will continue. But we need to understand how we can continue to build the synergy, because if we lose the momentum of working through synergy, I think we will have problems. The second thing that you need to bear in mind is really the impact that competition is going to continue to have. Knowledge-based competition is different from production-based competition or value-based competition, which is, the physical assets bit. So we need to continue to make the assets sweat, like we did in the 70s. But this time round, it's knowledge-based asset that we need to compete with. So you remember what I said at the beginning? I said in the 80s, we used to say, teams are the heroes of the 80s. Now I'm saying, teams are the heroes of the 21st century. That will remain. That's definitely important. So we need to allow the scope for specialization, because that expertise level means the knowledge base, the cumulative intellectual asset that we have within the organization is the fuel that we can use to compete more effectively. By the time, you need to cripple the competition so that by the time they think they're catching up, you have moved to a new generation of ideas and technologies and concepts. And when you really put those concepts together, that's the big leap forward that you make. So competition is hurting. In the 70s and the 80s, competition was technology-based or physical asset-based. And therefore, changing it used to take time. So now time is not an issue anymore, because with knowledge-based, knowledge becomes a commodity. You drop it in 5 minutes. You drop it in 2 seconds. You embrace new knowledge because you've got all of these people who are going around the world, learning, developing, building the competencies. And now with corporate universities, self-learning, lifelong learning, technology-based learning, it's real-time competition. So it's frightening. Think about it. It's frightening, but it is happening. We cannot ignore it. So in this context, the challenge is, how can we still get the interdependency bit? How can we maintain institutions and organizations as wholesome, as one entity, and then keep that drive for impacting positively? And the third one is really the emergence of the information age. Virtual teams exist. I mean, I meet a lot of colleagues, they say, I have never met my boss. And it might sound strange, but what do you need your boss for? You don't need your boss, because nowadays you negotiate your own contract, you choose your own holidays, you submit your own appraisal, you go for internal promotions that might exist. All of this is through a portal. A virtual portal is all what you need. Your boss receives your performance. They don't need to see your face to say, I like him or I don't like her. That's really not valid anymore. It's very sad, but let's not be nostalgic. Let's be realistic. Knowledge-based economy exists. So the proximity of individuals working together is not what creates synergy. What creates synergy is the power of the intellect, the power of thinking, the power of innovating. Against this mindset, there is one which is a little bit worrying, but maybe it shouldn't be so worrying. And that is that information now is distributed as a commodity, as an asset. In the old days, everything is, what comes top down is the management by objectives and what have you. What goes up to top management is performance reviews, performance reports, and everything else. So top management in their ivory towers had all the intelligence to make the right decisions. Now it's different, because now who controls the information? It's not top management. They don't even know how much information there is. Nobody is mapping the information within organizations. They will tell you, the explicit knowledge that we have, is the systems we have, the databases we have on our customers, etc. But the explicit knowledge is 20%, 30%, 40%. It's less than 50%. There's a lot of knowledge out there. People talking to each other through the internet. People talking to their suppliers out there. People talking to research centers. People asking for samples to be sent. All of that, who's controlling it? Nobody. And yet, it is helping make the decision-making process more effective. So we need to appreciate that. And I think this has reoriented top management's role to become more custodians of a common mission, but also to be more in charge of resource management, the allocation of resources. That will always be a top management responsibility. And I think we have to appreciate that stakeholder involvement is also important. For example, the role of suppliers. Suppliers create a lot of impact because they have a lot of information. Just very quickly now, some issues on teamwork, team size. This research basically saying it could range from 3 to 25. The average is about 8. Andy may wish to comment on this, when he talks to us about the HBOS experience. But at the end of the day, teams ideally we say about 8, because beyond 8 it becomes difficult to manage and then the personalities become an issue and so on and so forth. Just some issues on teamwork is this is a survey from 146 chief executive officers, and they are saying basically that there are lots of problems with self-managing teams, and you can see that it's a little bit biased, this study, because in the other, if you like, two respondents groups, managers are there. So they are saying that once you hand it over to other people, to the teams themselves, there are issues to do with teamwork, issues to do with delays, issues to do with risk and risk assessment for projects, issues to do with poor decision making, issues to do with lack of motivation, whatever. But you know, that's an interesting statistic. The other one is team longevity, and you can see that most projects are anything between 6 months to 2 years. We are talking here about improvement projects, re-engineering projects. The average business process re-engineering project is 18 months, so this study has confirmed it once again. Bigger projects, which are really about setting up new businesses or doing something radically innovative, they could be anything from 3 years beyond, but they tend to be smaller in number. This chart is very interesting also. Managers were asked to rate their own skills alongside the continuum of activities that they expected to do. And you can see that the effort that management are putting in is still the conventional way of operating. Making decisions, leadership by putting strategies and what have you, a goal cascade, dealing with crises and problems. Then it started to dip a little bit, because then they start to think about training people and creating the climate of the organization. But the thing which is interesting here is the softer side of the organization, the cultural side. That's where their influence becomes less proficient, because they don't have the people skills, like managing people. Here it's 5.6 as compared to 7.1. Developing, sustaining high motivation, dealing with the internal politics of the organization and so on and so forth. So that dips, and it's a bit skewed, because when you read it from the right to the left, you will see that it's soft skills, and then gradually it moves to the hard skills about structure, about planning, about, you know, those kind of things. So it's an interesting chart.